Continuing on the story of the Dakota Access Pipeline and the events that took place, Chief Bobby Patton, you were on the phone with Canadian Pacific actually just moments before this meeting. So what can you tell us in terms of where we stand and what their concerns are and where are we at?
Well, with the CP Rail and the CP Police had a lot of concerns. This is going to progress, it's going to get worse. But after a discussion with them, for myself and Kenneth, we explained to them how we're meeting with the community members who are involved in this protest. Their concerns is saying that MCK has been, they want this protest. The whole community of Kahnawake wants this whole protest. And we explained to them about the solidarity with Standing Rock, but there's an issue about now we're inconvenienced members of the community, we're inconvenienced outside communities, and it's having a bad effect on how we're trying to get the message out about this protest, about standing in solidarity. So now what we explained to the CP and CP Police that we're organizing a meeting with the community members. So after all our explanation, now they really feel at ease that they got some comfort now that things could roll out in a better way, and that it wasn't involved in any type of altercations or negative. So they're grateful on the way we're going at this.
All right, thanks, Bob. Another issue coming up in the end of the month, November 30th, the Supreme Court is going to be hearing. I guess it's the Chippewas of the Thames who are really not happy with the way the hearings are going for 9B. They said they weren't consulted properly or consulted at all. They weren't happy with it. The MCK, of course, intervened in the original hearing and came up with a list of 116 recommendations, which a lot of it had an effect, but not everyone had the opportunity or felt they had the opportunity. So the hearing is coming up the end of the month at the Supreme Court in Ottawa. You were actually invited, as you've been working on this file. You were invited to visit with the Chippewas out near London, Ontario, and then you met with the Ontario chief. So just give us a brief rundown on what happened there and why it was important for you to be there.
Well, Tuesday of last week, we got an emergency request from Grand Chief Leslie Whiteeye of the Chippewa of the Thames. She knew that we were involved in the Supreme Court here and we're interveners, but she also wanted to hear how Kahnawake has done their work in these pipelines. So we agreed to a meeting and it came up pretty quick. So we headed out, myself and Dennis Daibo. We met with them on a Tuesday. And after a lengthy discussion explaining how Kahnawake moved, how we've dealt with the pipelines, and our concern was always the interest and the rights to the land. It seems like the Chippewas and other First Nations are going this as a project matter. So they're looking at the project itself, but Kahnawake has taken it to what the native interests are and our native rights. So they were kind of like thrown back, and like Chief Whiteeye says, wow, this was a very aha moment, And she's like, we never thought of going that direction. So now the chief and council of the Chippewa of the Thames were very excited, and we explained how the waterways, they're always concerned about water. Water is life, and from the onset of Enbridge and the NEB only outlined at the time was 13 waterways that were going to be affected. And these were major waterways. But as Dennis and myself explained to the chief after, Patrick Ragas, who's our watercourse engineer, and after determining exactly the amount, was 868 waterways affected. And they're like, wow. So that was a major, a major point for not just them, but other First Nations along the pipeline. Well, we all know that the MCK's involvement, we got the stoppage to the right to open twice. So that was a big win for us. But unfortunately, we knew the way it was going to roll out. But we need to have our concerns all outlined and put into the NEB and with Enbridge. So they liked our direction, how we got involved with the pipelines. And one thing was, the community always says you're taking blood money and, but we explained to them how we went about obtaining funds, because That's their pipeline, not ours. So we need to learn about your pipeline. So you're going to pay for our time. So we went and formulated a capacity funding. And it was like, we explained to the Chippewas that on that Tuesday, but she says, you're invited to participate in the Chiefs of Ontario meeting. She says, can you, instead of just participating, can you be one of the major presenters to the Chiefs of Ontario? So, we agreed because we wanted to get Kahnawakeh's stance on how we proceeded on this pipeline. So myself and Dennis, I started off with, MCK's political and, and how we moved this along and, what stances we took. And Dennis went into the real technical part of the pipeline. So once after, I think it was about an hour and a half of a presentation, they asked us to be like the facilitators of breakout groups. From the Chiefs of Ontario, they couldn't believe the direction we took, and especially Grand Chief Isidore Day. He was very moved, and he's like, he says, we never expected or never thought of going this direction. So he says, I want to make a motion, or I want to have this brought up to the AFN in December. And he's hoping that Grand Chief Joe Norton, who he's going to reach out to, along with Chief Leslie White-Eyes, are going to reach out to Grand Chief Joe Norton. They're going to make some type of presentation or motion at the AFN to move something forward based on what Kahnawake has explained and outlined to them, and change the direction of their outlook on these pipelines. And because he says, I'm so against the pipelines. This is the Grand Chief Isidore Day. And he says, well, Chief Perry Bellegarde is more for the pipelines. So that's a major issue. And the thing is now, I think with Kahnawake, like the way we presented, we kind of put them in a different direction. Now it's not about a project now. They're moved away from the project now to about the interest and the rights to the land. So that is, that was very positive.
Well, obviously, this topic, we can go on all day because, just the presentation was an hour and a half. We don't have as much time to do that. But one of the things that came out of it was, out of the Ontario Chiefs meeting, which I guess was kind of fortuitous that you had the Chippewa meeting, and then right into that, the next day was the meeting with the Ontario Chiefs. So now there's going to be a day of action. So as we, just maybe briefly, you can tell us about that, because on November 30th, that's the date of the hearing at the Supreme Court in Ottawa, which is, the Supreme Court's located pretty much at Parliament Hill on one of the side buildings there. So what can you tell us? Well,
Chief White-Eye has, put this throughout. All the Chippewas, all the Ojibways, anybody in the treaty council, right across, she's reached out to them. But also now she's asking us to reach out to the Iroquois caucus. So this is what we're going to do and what we're trying to assist in, because together as one, we're going to be a lot stronger. And she's very excited because now on that day, they're going to have a sunrise ceremony in the morning around 6:30 on Victoria Island. They're going to roll out to the Parliament Hill. They're going to have a protest at Parliament Hill. Then they're going to all walk down, which is maybe 3 blocks, to the Supreme Court. So they want, like, their thing is to keep it peaceful, get the message out, and have the justices that sit on the Supreme Court take aware of what really is going on and how does the Native people really feel about the pipelines. And so that's what the plan is, and I hope we're going to be able to garner a lot of support from Iroquois communities, AFNQL, and the Chippewas. So we're trying to get this message out to have as many people to be present on that day. Well, it looks like most of this show, when you think about it, it's all about pipelines. One way or another, whether it's Dakota Access, 9B. We didn't even talk about Trans-Canada Pipeline, so that'll be a story for another day. So it's going to be busy. I know you have a poster. Hopefully we can show that poster about and the agenda. Yep, and we'll also get the message out next week before the date, to let people know what's going on and if they want to participate. Just as note, and when meeting with the Ontario Chiefs, and there was many Ontario Chiefs along, they liked the idea that myself and Dennis put forward about having a treaty alliance, something similar that was signed with all of Canada. But what we want to do is try to get a treaty alliance or some type of working protocol between all the First Nations along Line 9, not Line 9B or Line 8, Line 9. and also have it because all these other pipelines that like TransCanada, Energy East are all coming through the same area. And they thought it was like a real big idea. You know, they loved the idea. Now they're pushing this out, that we need to come together and work as one, because we know that pipelines will always separate the communities or the nations and try to win over by, you know, when you're alone. So we're saying no more meetings alone, meet as one. And that's, Grand Chief Isidore Day is like, that's the way we're going.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Bob. And, I know it's been a busy time, so rest up for the weekend. All right.